Jack McGuire, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Of course.
So
I'm happy to be here.
I have to ask you this, and I will first tell you the story of my experience. There was the game of the year this weekend in honor of Her Majesty the Queen, who passed away, which was, of course, the 53.5 over in the BYU Baylor game. And Big Cat over at Barstool obviously made this the centerpiece, the game of the year. And I faded him on it. And it had to have been the most satisfying 3 hours or so of my gambling life to see him go through the torture of that experience and then almost make it at the end. I was actually rooting at the end for him to beat me because I was so compassionate for this man. How satisfying does it feel as a gambler to fade Big Cat?
I never intentionally fade him. I will never intentionally do it. On Thursday night, I was on the under, and the NFL's opening game, Rams-Bills, and I tweeted it out, and everyone called me. There's a term in the Barstool world called a scale, which is essentially like a snake or like a rat against the family, because Big Cat was big on the over. But Saturday night, I didn't fade him, but my favorite play of the weekend was BYU minus the point. So at the end, I was definitely not cheering for that. Well, every time that BYU had a
you screwed me though on that BYU Fresno. What was the other combo that you had?
I had Fresno. I had Fresno against Oregon State, and Fresno scored with like 40 seconds left, and then they allowed Oregon State to go all the way down the field and score in the last play. Yeah, that was pathetic.
But can I just tell you, I've never been to Fresno State. I don't care about their sports success at all. And I was so mad at them because I followed your advice.
I couldn't believe that was like when they blew it twice.
Yeah.
There was a part, and then they came back down the field, and I was like, oh wow, they scored and they made sure they completed the comeback. And then they missed the extra point, and I was like, oh, this is not good. And Fresno State really let me down. They really did. The Bulldogs.
So, but when you are the Skell, when people are messaging you and saying, hey, man, you took you took the opposite side of something that one of our, major personalities has done, is that not allowed? Is that something that the Barstool world kind of frowns upon? Or does it just kind of tag you?
If I told Big Cat I was on the under, he wouldn't care at all. There is a kind of a weird thing where, the show West Wing?
Yeah.
The famous scene where it's like they're talking about how a guy falls in a hole, and then the doctor comes by, the priest, and then the friend goes into the hole and says, and then the guy in the hole's like, wait a second, why'd you come in here? Now we're both in here. And the friend says, I've been in here before. I know the way out. It's a very common phrase used around here, because if you don't ride on the big games with the big personalities, it is kind of seen as like you're going against them. But as long as you don't do it all the time and they know it's not intentional, it doesn't matter. But in the Barstool world, the fans, sometimes they'll lash out at you. But that's any fan of anything.
Yeah.
Obviously, Big Cat has a much, much, much bigger following. There's a lot more fans, and they came at me but I was not on the under on the game of the year. I would never intentionally fade the game of the year.
I love being on.
It's bad karma.
I loved being on that under. It was one of the most, like I said, it's one of the most satisfying gambling experiences I've ever had. And I felt for him at the end. I wanted him to beat me. So I have to ask you. You have this excellent story that you tell about how you ended up where you are, and just the randomness of it. The tailgate Heisman experience and everything else. I'm curious, did you read the Ethan Strauss piece that was going around relatively recently about Buzz Bissinger and the old days of sports blogs?
No, but I should, because that does sound very.
So
I was kind of at the tail end of, like, there's still sports blogs, obviously, but I was on the tail end of the real popularity of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the things that he points to, and one of the points that he makes, is basically that he got to be an NBA reporter on the Golden State Warriors, basically the same way that you got to be where you are, which is sort of landing in this weird netherworld of sports blogging, where he was associated, with being kind of a nerd about a specific team, specific franchise, and then sort of elevated himself. But one of the points he makes was there wasn't a ladder that all these sports writers were kind of writing, and there wasn't a ladder anymore to reach the pinnacle that they had achieved. It certainly seems to me that your path, your sort of odd path to Barstool, is indicative of that.
Yeah, no, it is. And I've thought, like, when I went to school, I never even thought about studying sports journalism. Mm-hmm. We had I went to Fordham University in the Bronx. There is sports journalism there. Not sports, but I think journalism major.
I mean, there should be sports journalism. I mean, Lombardi coached there. So, like,
yeah, I know. Vince Scully. Yeah. Vince Scully went there. So did Mike Breen, who's the top NBA guy on ESPN now. But, yeah, I am a perfect example, and I'm lucky of it, and I know I'm lucky, but I am an example of how the gatekeepers around sports media don't exist as much anymore. If you want to be a play-by-play announcer, they do exist. Mm-hmm. But if you want to do, like, bizarre commentary and just all you really need now is, and back in the day, all you needed was a computer. Now all you really need is a phone. And if you have the ability and confidence to record yourself and allow yourself to get better, it's like those barriers are not as, the ladder isn't there as much. It's not like you have to go cover D3 football in North Dakota with the hopes of one day covering Michigan football.
It's so weird because, when I remember going to college, and I'm a good bit older than you, but when my family didn't have cable, we were not a cable household, and when I went to college, it was the first time that I had a TV that got ESPN, and I remember watching it back then, and that being a big deal, and paying attention to kind of the ESPN universe of commentators, and everybody, and that kind of thing, and even paying attention to, like, the moves that they made, the fact that, like, Rich Eisen left them for NFL Network was like a weird thing, that happened. And then I would never have expected the fact that 20 years later, when I go to look for sports commentary, I go to Barstool Twitter feeds, I go to Pardon My Take and Will Compton's podcast, I go to That's Good Sports on YouTube, and John Boy, and some of these other great YouTube channels that are out there. It's just a very different world in terms of the ecosystem of sports commentary than I ever thought could exist. Back in the day. Tell me a little bit about your perspective as being kind of part of that, about what's going on there and how this kind of process of sports analysis and humor and opinions has been democratized.
No, yeah. I'm probably a lot like you, and I find the media aspect of the moves and whatnot very interesting, and how these things, like, I am a part of Barstool, but things like Barstool and even The Enemy that was and kind of doesn't exist anymore, Deadspin, and all these random, someone could write or do God knows how long of a documentary or a book about it. But I find it very interesting because it's like ESPN had this massive lead, and they still do. Don't get me wrong. They're Disney. They got billions of dollars, but they didn't let their individuals who do have personalities exist outside of, like, they gave Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless the okay, you can go. But look, the most popular people at ESPN now are Scott Van Pelt, who's allowed to show his personality at night.
Yep.
and then probably like Stephen A. Smith. I'm probably forgetting a few, but that goes to show how like the unexpected. No one expected Barstool or John Boy or anything like that to come in, and the unexpected changed the whole media sphere. I'm talking a lot in like a bunch of different directions, but it's very interesting, and ESPN definitely is I mean, they had to attack social media. They attack it pretty well, but they had to bring in one of their biggest acquisitions was a guy named Omar. I forget his last name, but he ran an Instagram page. He started at UCF when he was 18 years old. Now he gets paid 7 figures by ESPN because he's a personality and he helps run like all of their social medias. That's like insane to think about. He was 18 years old and he just started this NBA highlights account, and then now he gets paid $1 million to probably more than that by ESPN. It's crazy.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when PFT Commentator was just one of the guys at Kissing Susie Colbert, and I know a couple of the other KSK sort of guys, and just like the depravity and hilarity of that blog was something that gave me like endless amounts of humor, and also I still remember some of the funniest stuff that they published, which I'm sure that Drew McGuire would now deny. Yeah, but it's one of these things where like there was this aspect of hilarity and authenticity of like this is. I mean, the way I would put it is this. What I feel like you get with Barstool, what you get with some of these other places, is you get the smartest guy in the bar. You get the guy who's at the end of the bar, who knows the most about sports, and maybe some of his stuff is BS, but it's entertaining BS, and you like it, and you want to like bounce stuff off of him, and you want to be his pal, and you want to buy him a drink when he's losing, or when he's throwing his hands in the air because his team is doing something dumb. And with ESPN, everything just seems so corporate and so managed, and so the personalities all basically have to be the same. I was watching. My wife doesn't understand sports, so she comes at it from like the external, of someone who understands media but doesn't understand sports. And she was watching me watch the ESPN like morning show before the games yesterday, and she was like, how's Sam Ponder doing? How's she adapted to things? I was like, honestly, hun, you could replace her with anybody else, and I wouldn't even notice. And I say that without any disrespect, because I don't think she's like a dumb person or anything like that. But like, it's all just corporate person in a box kind of a thing, and the only person who's allowed to have personality is Rex Ryan. And so it's like, it's just. But anyway, it just is a very interesting media dynamic, because it's not true of political media. It's not true of lots of other areas of media, but within the sports world, it seems to be true. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Why is it not like? I think there are some. I don't follow all political media, but I do keep a really close eye on it. And I know there's like not personal friends, but internet friends, I guess I'd say, which is a bizarre thing to say, but I've never met them. But people like Greg Price, whose Twitter now is like one of the best out there and is a must read. But he started as like a social media coordinator, I think, at the Daily Caller. And now I don't know exactly what he's doing, but I think he's working on whatever he's doing, like consulting with whatever. I think there are little aspects of it, but sports is probably because it's, at the end of the day, sports is awesome and sports is everything in terms of culture, but it's not the most important thing. And that's probably why people like it, because typically sports, Barstool, even still ESPN, and the people you mentioned, I still think are really, really talented. They're just different talents. Like they fit in that corporate ESPN media role really great. Maybe they do well here. I'm not sure. I know I wouldn't do well at ESPN, but these people, they understand that, or the people that consume the media usually consume it as a way to get away, as a way to like, maybe it's a shitty day at work. Who knows? Like everyone has a lot of issues in this world. And sports is a way to kind of get away. And sometimes ESPN, and I'm sure you agree with me on this, they don't focus as much on the sports or the comedy aspect, and the thing you're trying to get away from then pops up again, and you're like, oh man, like where do I even go? and that's why people go.
That's where I feel like there's a real missed opportunity, because I mean, kind of what Barstool has latched onto is the absurdity of these sports, and but like loving the absurdity, embracing it, not mocking it, but understanding that like the fans love it because it's absurd, and we love it because it's absurd, because we're seeing these guys in these outfits chase a ball around the field, and because we're not going to mock the people who jump into tables that are on fire. We're going to love them, Yeah. So that to me is just, what makes, the good coverage of sports that comes from your organization, that comes from these other YouTube channels and the like. It makes it so enjoyable because it does say, no, we understand this is an escape. This is an escape from the degradations of work and home life and everything else. But to me, I think that the thing that you get at that is deeper, and this is something that I think is really interesting, is that sports are meant to unify on a level. They are supposed to bring our humanity together in a way. And so one of the things that I think about that when I look at, sort of the way that Barstool approaches this, and the way that, some of these other folks we mentioned approach it, is that they understand the human unifying nature of being able to root for teams against each other, or together, even if we have all of these other disagreements. And when ESPN rolls into these territories of division, as they did with Jamel Hill, and as they did with so many other people who they've, promoted over the years, it takes that away from us, and in a sense robs the social benefit of sports from us.
Yeah, no, I think sports is incredibly unifying. I can think of so many examples, and it shows that human aspect that it's like, no, we like to be together in a group with the same goal. And sometimes that gets taken away for much bigger reasons. And sometimes, yeah, I mean, I still watch ESPN sometimes, and it's frustrating. But the cool thing is, and I hope, and the internet still, like, in 10 to 15 years, still allowing these nobodies become somebodies, it's like, hey, if I don't like this, I can go watch something else. Like, even if it's like, hey, I don't even like the coverage of this event, you can, like, there's people who, like, we do it at Barstool. It's like you, like, can watch with Barstool personalities, or I work a lot with our European soccer our soccer content creators, and they watch every game on YouTube, and they have a timer in the bottom so you can sync it up. So let's say you're like, no, I don't like this. I don't like the people talking or how they're covering it. You can just mute it, and the game's on. And then this guy, whether it's Dave, Big Cat, Expressions, Troops, you can name a billion people. It's like, hey, and it's a lot more personal. It's like you just said 10 minutes ago. You're at the bar. You're not listening. There's a lot of great commentators, but you're not listening to like the boring guy or girl.
Let me ask you. Let me ask you a couple questions about this NFL season. There seems to me to be, a lot of interesting storylines about this season. It seems like it really does seem like the first season where we're fully back, because last year was kind of partially back. And, you still had like COVID protocols and teams that were going to deal with like, suspensions and things like that. And this time around, I really don't think that's going to be a problem. Knock on wood. What do you see as kind of the dominant storylines headed into this season? And, particularly, what do you think are kind of the, if you had to list like a top 3 controversies or sort of big questions hanging over teams, what would those be?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of this is a common theme in the NFL, but a lot of questions about quarterbacks. Kyler Murray just got a new contract. He gets blown out yesterday. Lamar Jackson denied his contract and bet on himself. And he played I really like Lamar Jackson. I think he's phenomenal. Then you have guys like Daniel Jones, who this is probably his last chance with the Giants. They won yesterday. Tua Tagovailoa.
Darn them
on the
Dolphins.
Yeah.
They were in several parlays that I had on the other side.
So the quarterbacks of and then you could even, I'm a Jets fan, and it's like Zach Wilson, he's going to come back once he's healthy, but I'm definitely missing some, but look at,
how much did you appreciate that RG3 line about Zach Wilson that ran during the BYU game?
What did he say?
Oh, you missed it. He said, they really loved that Zach Wilson when he was here at BYU. He had that dog fight in him, and he was loyal to Cougars.
Nah, RG3. Guys, RG3 is one of I hope ESPN just allows him to do what he says because he's so cringe and whatnot that he's funny. And RG3 was when BYU or Baylor was driving that last drive, he kept saying things like, "Oh, they're going to use all 4 downs here."
Yeah,
it's overtime.
Yes, they are. Of course, man. He quoted.
Yeah, they are.
The Dark Knight 4 times in the fourth quarter.
He did. He did say that you live long enough to become the villain or whatever. But other storylines. I think the Cowboys have turned into a massive storyline. It's wait. Are they going to be the worst team in the league now? With Dak being hurt, they have a lot of offensive line injuries. And then third, it's Tom Brady's still the guy.
Yeah.
Is he still the guy? He looks, and then obviously there's all the off-the-field stuff with him too. You don't really know if it's true or not. It's how much do you put into the New York Post? Who knows? No disrespect to them, but who knows where they get there's a lot of fighting between him and Giselle. But he's 45 years old. And the offense last night for the Bucs, even though they didn't score in the red zone, looked he doesn't look 45. No. So, and typically with the Bucs, he struggled earlier in the season and turned it on. Now it looks like he's just humming.
Yeah.
So
one thing that I feel like is going to be a major storyline this season, and I'm not just saying this because I had them in the game, but the Bills. Can they go all the way? Can they go all the way with this Josh Allen-led team? And, I was just so impressed the offense that Ken Dorsey was running, and look, I mean, maybe I'm a softie and maybe this is a generational thing just because I remember Ken Dorsey, but I am such a sucker for offensive coordinators who used to be really good quarterbacks with weak arms, who could never actually do all the things they knew that they wanted to do when it came to the NFL. And I just feel man, if I was a Bills fan, I would feel nervous because I would be this feels like it might actually be the moment, just given the way that the AFC kind of stacks up. What do you think about that?
No, the Bills, yeah. And the addition of Von Miller, he looked great on Thursday night. The AFC does look wide open, and it's the Chiefs will still be the Chiefs, but you look at it, you look at what happened yesterday with the Bengals didn't look good. I don't want to overreact too much to week 1, but that could be a big storyline too. It's is Joe Burrow as good as the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady's, or is he still a tier below? We know he's good, but it's how good?
Yeah.
But the Bills, I would feel a little nervous if I was a Bills fan because it's everyone's predicting us to win the Super Bowl, and that would definitely make me feel a little But they looked good on Thursday night. I'll give them that much. They really did, and I don't know it's them and the Chiefs in the AFC right now, at least in my opinion.
So I have to ask you as a Washington Redskins fan. This new franchise and Carson Wentz. They beat the Bengals yesterday. Wentz had a really good day. He threw for over 300 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. Personally, I wasn't a big fan of the signing because I think that he's a mid-tier quarterback, very up and down. But this is also a pretty weak division. And, is this a situation where you think that they could actually have some success? Or do you think that I should basically just plan on everything, continuing to disappoint me as it has for decades?
Yeah, I'm pretty much the or same as you in the other side with the Jets. It's like we're both in the East, and we both sometimes have hope, and then it just all falls apart. But I think the Commanders actually, they look pretty good. I'm probably, like, if you had to rank people and their opinions on Carson Wentz, I'm definitely higher than most people. But it does feel like he has this weird curse. It's like, yeah, he throws for 300 yards. He throws for 4 touchdowns, but then he throws an interception to a defensive lineman. It's like, how does and then it's like, oh, the Colts look really good. They're going to be like sleepers in the playoffs. All they have to do is beat the Jaguars, and they lose to the Jaguars. It's like it's almost perfect with PFT, or as he's calling himself now, PFT Commander, being like Carson Wentz being his quarterback. It's one of those things, and I know we're just circling back to the Barstool discussion. It's weird. It's like all these things have broken right for Barstool. It's like the Patriots were really good. Yep. The Red Sox, Bruins, Celtics were really good. And then it's like these, like now it's like you have guys like PFT Commenter and, he gets the guy who's made fun of the most forever on his team. And so I'm actually kind of high on them. The East is weird. It's like, I think the Eagles, Giants, and Commanders are all going to compete for that first spot, and they're all pretty close to each other. But then it's like, I think the Cowboys, and I'm sure you take a lot of pride in this. I think they're in trouble.
Yeah,
I think Jerry Jones knows it too. You could see it on his face.
Yeah, no.
He was walking into the locker room last night like, "This is bad."
I like Jerry because as much as I hate his franchise, because you can read his face completely, and he reacts exactly as I would if I were in his same position. So
yeah,
he wears it on his sleeve.
He's somebody that, like, last night, I saw the clip of him walking in the locker room after the game, and he probably at that point knew that Dak's hand needed surgery. And I looked at him, and I think I saw in his face, and I'm not saying anything, but I think he's getting to his point. He's like, I don't know how many more years I've left. There's not unlimited time.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it's like if this doesn't work, it's like, I'm sure Jerry will be around for a while, but I'm sure he hears that clock ticking a little bit, and he wants to see another Super Bowl or two.
So, Jack, let's go out on this. I love kind of the fact that Barstool has become essentially, a part of this gambling universe that it didn't even exist when it was founded, and you all give advice. You all give, sort of tips and guidance that people accept and embrace in ways that probably end up with most of them losing money. I'm just curious, what is the process that you go through before you say, I'm just going to send this pick out, or this decision that I have out into the world, understanding that people may lose hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars over the course of the next hour based on what I just suggested.
So funny enough, one of my biggest storylines in my Barstool tenure was in 2019, and probably the worst football game ever. I received a tip that from a reputable source that UMass was trying to essentially throw a game because they don't like their coach. A lot of players were suspended, and they were going up against a team that looked like they were playing pretty decent. And I tweeted and I blogged it and put it out there, and I didn't say that exactly, but I did infer it. And I said, this is I said in the blog, do you want to be a part of history or not? And it was UMass against Akron in 2019, and Akron was -9. They lost by 14 or whatever. I still hear about it, rightfully so. And people were sending me their bet slips and hundreds of thousands of dollars, not individual, but added up. A lot of people took it. Now, I think about that still. And I think I'm a big believer in like individuals' own will over themselves. It's like, if I take a pick from Big Cat and it loses, I'm not going to yell at him. But there is a responsibility. But then again, it's like, if you're looking to me to like betting something that should be entertaining and done responsibly, and you do want to like make some extra money, but you should never bet anything that you're like, you can't lose or even come close to it. So, but you do have to understand there is some responsibility. So I do like, I mean, everything I put out there, like I put my money on too. So like when they lose, it loses. Like I lose too. But sometimes, I mean, who knows? It's like people will lose less than me. People will lose more than me. But yeah.
Well, I do encourage people to bet responsibly. And I do believe that you work in an office full of gambling addicts who all need.
No. We're all properly trained and we bet responsibly.
Exactly. Jack, thanks so much 100%. For taking the time to join me today.
All right. Thank you. And just quickly, if you are going to bet on any sports, do it at the Barstool Sportsbook if it is in your state.